Hey, everybody out there, this is Dave Marsh, the spot. Sorry, that's my other channel. This is Welcome to the Land of Confusion, the Ricochet Show, where we talk to by members, for members, where we talk to members. So today we brought in, Flickr suggested we bring on DA Venters on, and I thought that was a great idea. And as we were talking just before the chat, uh, people assume that you're a lawyer, that you're DA meant district attorney, but you're not. You were telling a different it stands for your name.
Yeah, that's my name. Yeah, it's it has caused confusion a couple times, and I can understand why. So I should probably change my handle, but no, those are just my initials. I'm actually I work at a public defender's office. At least that's one of my jobs, and so I'm usually on the other side of the table. So I'm on the defense side almost always. So.
What kind of cases do you typically get assigned?
Over the years, it's really run the gamut. Right now, my main docket is in juvenile court, which I really like. So juvenile delinquencies. I do a lot of the adult probation violation cases, which are frustrating but simple. They're real easy cases, but they can be very frustrating. But I've done it all. I mean, I've since I've been there in that office, I've done everything from murder down to traffic, whatever's there. So a little bit of everything. So, it's an interesting job, I guess.
Oh yeah. Flickr, you got a follow up?
No, I mean, I've attended one murder case, and it just sounds pretty exotic. Do you feel like you have a guy's life in your hands when you're defending him in a murder case?
To some extent, you do. It moves. It's kind of like anything, though. It moves. You're just so dialed in and focused on the job that you don't step back and see how it feels to be there much. So in some ways, it's just like any other case. I mean, it really is. In a lot of ways, it's just what's the proof, and are there any defenses, and it's just the stakes are higher. Now, let's see, I've had 5 homicide cases that I've been involved in. The one that was only one went to trial, and that was a murder case, and that one was hopeless from the start. I mean, it was really. The guy had a plea deal on the table that he should have taken, but just wouldn't. He just wouldn't take it, no matter what we said. And so he insisted on a trial, and we had the trial, and we lost, of course. And that was that. So I don't know if I felt like I had his life in my hands so much, because I felt like I did everything I could for him, and I felt like the outcome was going to be pretty obvious, and it was his choice. So and that's the way it's got to be, but it was a mistake. So
can I ask another question that's
off
topic? If I get pulled over for running a yellow light,
okay,
and the cop asks, or for speeding,
okay,
and the cop asks me, "Do you know how fast you were going?" What should I say?
You should say, I don't have any idea.
Okay, all right.
No, he's got you. If you say anything over the limit, he's got you. No, I don't even speeding tickets. It's unless there's some kind of equipment malfunction, or those are pretty hard to beat. But usually, you're trying to get sympathy for that. He's like, "Gosh, I was in a hurry," and that. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Okay. Because maybe you've seen it. There's this law professor. I don't know how old this video is, but he's a young guy in the video, and he spends an hour telling his classroom never speak to a police officer.
Yeah.
Ever. I didn't see that. How do you feel about that? And how do you respond when they say, do you know how fast you were going, and you don't want to speak to the police officer? How do you do that?
Yeah. it's hard to do, and that's generally my advice as well. And what I tell people is, it's not that you're never going to say anything. We're not necessarily going to just remain silent the whole time, but it's much better to wait until you know what their evidence is before you say anything, because what I tell people is, they've got to prove the whole case. They've got to prove where you were, what day it was, what time of day it was. They've just got a heavy burden there. And as soon as you start talking, you might give them half that. Maybe you're protesting your innocence, and what I'm trying to think of what kind of case it would be, but you're making it easy for them. Now, eventually, you got to do that sometimes, right? I mean, but it's just early on, before you know what they know. It's just strategically better not to say anything, even if you're innocent, because they don't think you are usually, right? I mean, they're usually, by the time you're getting interviewed by the police, especially if you're in custody, like at a custodial interview at the police station, most of the time they think you're guilty already, and they're just looking for you to help them prove the case. Mm-hmm. Even if you don't admit ultimately the thing that they're looking for, people generally admit that they're at the scene, or they're, well, yeah, I was there, but this other thing happened, or this guy did something else, and you haven't said anything directly incriminating, but you've given them the fact that you were there, at least. It's hard to get into much detail about an actual case or actual facts, but
yeah,
if that makes sense. So,
well, I guess we have I watch this one lawyer channel, and he was doing an episode on Alec Baldwin today, and he's like, "Mr. Baldwin, you need to stop tweeting, especially about your case, because the police are looking at your tweets."
Right.
What is the latest on that? I read on a legal site that somebody had reported that he had actually. They were, I don't know if you've heard this, but mm-hmm. they were taking, once again, they had to reshoot a scene, and he pulled out his pistol and pointed it at the cinematographer and said, "How about if I just shoot you too instead?" And pulled the trigger. And that's I read that one place, but it was on a legal site, and the guy said, "I don't know that this is true. I don't know that the guy who said this had any knowledge of it."
Right.
But I mean, is that the latest that you've heard, or have you heard anything?
I haven't heard anything. I don't know. That would be an awful fact for him if that's true.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really pretty reckless.
Yeah.
Yeah. He broke it down to an accident, or negligence, and then criminal negligence.
Right.
And apparently pulling a pistol and pointing it at somebody and pulling the trigger, even if you think it's unloaded, is still criminal negligence.
Yeah, I think so. I could certainly see a criminal negligence charge there. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
This is somewhat of a segue. Are you an expert in firearms as well there, Andrew?
No, I'm not. I don't. Well, I do own one. I own it's a replica, but it's a working replica. It's one of these 1850 Colt replicas, like cap and ball Colt. I've never fired it, but I'd like to someday. I just don't know how. I got to get the stuff and figure out how to do it. But it's a pretty neat gun.
Yeah. No. The lawyer to ask Flicker is Arizona Patriot Jerry.
Mm-hmm.
He's the guy. He's more of a civil trial lawyer, but he definitely knows everything about firearms.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I just wondered what the, I just wondered if anybody had heard any more advanced, more accurate version of what happened, because pointing a gun at somebody and saying, "How about if I kill you instead?" and shooting them to death doesn't look good. It just doesn't look good.
No, it's appalling. I mean, that's appalling conduct if you did that. It really is. That certainly, I think, if that's what happened, that certainly would, land on the criminal side of things. Not murder. I mean, it's obviously not an intentional murder, but certainly some form of homicide.
Yeah, reckless endangerment is what it comes to mind from watching all my, Law and Order episodes.
Yeah, that's right. Different states will call it different things. Some states you call that murder, third-degree murder, or voluntary manslaughter. All kinds of ways that's. But yeah.
I think in Canada it's first-degree manslaughter.
I see. Yeah.
Okay, so getting back to more about you.
Sure.
What was it? Where did you grow up, and what was it like growing up there?
I grew up in Pulaski County, Kentucky, which is in the south central part of the state, pretty rural area. A small town called Somerset is my hometown. But we kind of lived, when I was a little kid, we lived out in the county, kind of on a little farm. It was a great place to grow up. I've lived most of my adult life in Ohio. That's where I live now. I live in Tip City, Ohio. But I still consider myself a Kentuckian. You can't take the Kentucky out of the boy, I guess. So I've lost my accent. Everybody tells me that anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you definitely sound more like you're from Ohio.
Yeah, that's too bad. But I can't help it. And when you're immersed in this accent, it just comes on anyway. You can't help it. So
yeah. I remember my brief stay in Kentucky, and basically it was because I was going to a convention in Cincinnati at the airport hotel in Cincinnati, and in order to get there, you have to drive through Kentucky. Right.
Yeah, the Cincinnati airport's actually in Kentucky. It's on the Kentucky side. We're proud of that. But it's a wonderful place. It's that part of Kentucky is it's not quite in the mountains. It's a little bit, more kind of in the foothills, but there's a lot of that culture there. A lot of the mountain, Appalachian culture. People have kind of moved just a little bit west. And it's kind of it's a little bit southern, a little bit Midwest. It's kind of a mix.
Mm-hmm.
I said in the bio I sent to you, when I went to college, I went to college at Miami of Ohio. Here, that's where I met my wife, but my friends in college are always just amazed at the stories I had from Kentucky. I knew the reputation obviously that Kentucky has, and Kentucky, we have a little bit of an inferiority complex about that, I think. But I didn't know till I got there how many Kentuckian jokes there are in Ohio.
Oh.
They tell them all the time. It's kind of like a Polish jokes or something.
Yeah.
So what's that?
I was just gonna say, didn't you guys invent Kentucky windage?
Yeah, I guess so. But so I'd get mad. My friends would be making jokes about it, and I'd get mad, yell at them. We'd have these arguments all the time, and I'd get real frustrated with them. And that just made it worse. They just laugh that much harder. But then we'd start telling stories of our hoods and homes, and I'd tell them, I had these neighbors named Bat and Ruby. They're wonderful people, old couple that lived across the road from us, and they lived in basically you'd call it a hole in the ground. I mean, they dug into the hillside and kind of finished the outside of it, but they basically lived in a cave. They were very odd, but Bat wore the overalls, had a big long beard, and they had all these crazy animals. They'd have animals with weird deformities, They had a chicken. They had chickens, and they'd have club feet. They had crazy dogs. They had a dog. They had a little Chihuahua, and it was missing about half its lower jaw.
Oh wow!
I don't know how the thing got around. It was a cute little thing for that, but they named him Tiger. So I started telling these stories, and then I realized that it's all true. I just finally break down. It's all true. All the Kentucky stories are true. You know? but I loved it anyway, and it's there's a lot of weird people there, but it's a good place, good people. So.
Well, I know from I went to a few years ago. I was on a trip, and I went to a few distilleries, and they're all talking about how because of the laws under Kentucky for bourbon, you got to make it in the state, and you can only use the barrel one time. So all these other places that I was, these rum distilleries and other places I was visiting, they're like, yeah, we get everyone gets their barrels from Kentucky.
Yeah. The things Kentucky's known for, all these like bad habits, right? Like tobacco and bourbon, stuff like that. So,
yeah. Well, I learned the true price of alcohol when I went to Kentucky, because the markups up here in Canada, or even in some of the northern states, and then you go into there and you're like, wait, I can buy what for how much? An $80 bottle of rum was going for like $35. I was like,
nice. Yeah. Now, what part of Canada are you in?
I'm from a place called Hamilton, Ontario.
Okay.
So, if you're looking at Lake Ontario, you've got Toronto, the elbow of Lake Ontario on the left.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Flicker, you're in Guam, is that right? Did I?
Oh yeah, yeah. It's hot here.
Is it? Yeah.
It's funny because I've been wanting to. We were supposed to be moving back to the States right about now, but things seem to be holding up, and having to do with COVID mostly. But one of the weird things is that Guam is not actually part of the United States. It's a territory, and I wonder about where the future might lie. Is Guam going to be nuked first,
right.
or is it going to be controlled last?
Yeah. I don't know. It's still a pretty big military presence there, right? And they're big.
Yeah, I'd say that's half the economy, probably.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and the other half is tourism, but that's suffering now. So.
I see.
Yeah.
That's too bad.
Yeah. Well, but it's hot, so that's all right.
Yeah.
I don't ever have to light a fire again.
Hey, and if could you really tell the difference?
Between what and what?
I didn't catch that. You were kind of breaking up there.
Me or Flicker?
Oh, you were.
Oh, okay. So my joke was, if he got nuked, would he be able to tell the difference?
Right.
I have gas masks someplace. I've got the duct tape. But I think that probably one nuclear bomb on Guam would probably wipe out all civilization.
I'd probably do it, huh? Yeah.
Yeah. Or one especially if it's hypersonic coming.
Yeah.
Out. I don't know. But it's. I'm sure that a quick death has its upsides. Sorry.
It's something that's got to be considered at some point. So, I guess.
So you grew up the son of a judge?
I did. Yeah, my dad was a judge. He became a judge very young. He was like 28 or something like that when he became a judge, which is, unfathomably young to me for that. I can't imagine what all the old lawyers in town thought of that, but none of them wanted to do it. Apparently, that's how he kind of got that job. But yeah, he was a judge. I was always, I had a brother and a sister, older brother, younger sister, and I was always the judge's boy, right? In a small town in Kentucky, that's kind of how that is. But it was good. I could tell from a young age that people respected him. Just by the way they talk about it. And so I was always proud of that. And he was a good example. I should say, he's still alive. So, yeah. But he eventually, this was not until long after I became an adult and, lived in Ohio and was kind of away from there, but he became a Kentucky Supreme Court justice, was appointed to that court, I guess about 2008 or so, and was on the Kentucky Supreme Court for 10 years. So,
wow.
Yeah. So he had quite a career.
Yeah, from small town judge to on the Supreme Court.
Yeah. And it's funny, it really was, I would joke with him about, he just it just fell into his lap sort of, like I said, he went to the University of Kentucky for law school. And then right out of law school in like 1975, he got a job down in Somerset, my hometown, as assistant prosecutor, part-time prosecutor, and part-time lawyer. And he did that for a couple of years, and then Kentucky revamped their legal system. They did away with all the local courts, like mayor's courts and municipal courts and things like that, and just created a new unified state court system. So all the courts there are state courts. There's no county courts or anything like that. So that in that revamping, they created a brand new court, a very low-level court called a district court, and nobody wanted to do it. Didn't pay anything, and all there weren't many lawyers around, and so he said, "Well, okay, I'll do it," and then that was that. Mm-hmm. So I think he a few years later he ran for the next level up, called circuit court, and then he did that for 20 years. Never was opposed in the elections after that first one. Mm-hmm. So the dog is whining. I don't know why. So yeah, it was, he was a great influence, and that's a great blessing for me, I think. So.
Yeah, and your mom was a teacher.
Mom was a teacher. Yep, she was an English teacher, and also a great influence. From that point of view. They divorced. They split up when I was about 14. But we all turned out okay from that. She moved. She now lives over in Columbus. So I'm a little closer to her than I am to him, geographically now. But yeah, she was an English teacher. She was the daughter of a coal miner. My grandfather on her side he had kind of an interesting story. He was, born in the early 20s and was a real poor family in the mountains of eastern Kentucky there. And of course, went into the mines at, about age 13 or so. Didn't like that, obviously. And he and my grandmother, they got married when they were teenagers. I think my grandmother was 14. And so, desperately poor. But, he's one of those guys that just would work himself to the bone and work all the time. For a while, he was also a, kind of a self-ordained preacher, these kind of traveling preachers, and did that for a while. They had lots of kids. And so eventually he decided, he couldn't do this. He just couldn't stay in the mines, couldn't subject his family to that level. And like a lot of people in the 50s, there was kind of a big migration out of the mountains, So he learned how to weld. He became a welder, which he did by a train ran through his neighborhood or through his farm. And he would jump on the train as it moved. He would just, they call it hobo the train. So he'd jump on the train, ride it to Ashland, Kentucky, where he learned how to weld. And so he would take that train ride once a week and learned how to weld. Eventually they moved into the Midwest, moved up to like the Columbus, Ohio area. And so that was a huge thing for my family, or at least on my mom's side, to escape that poverty there. So
yeah,
I always appreciate that.
Flicker, you want to ask something? I'm just asking you sometimes because we know we can't see you. So
yeah, I'm just my interest actually is more in Kentucky, but I don't think that's fair to stick you to just Kentucky.
Oh, that's all right. I love talking about Kentucky.
But I mean, well, two questions, and you can pick and choose what you want to answer. But the first is what is the culture like in Kentucky today? Is it conservative? Is it Christian? Is it does it have liberal cities in it, or cities at all? Does it and well, I guess that's enough right there.
Sure. It's an interesting question because it's I would say it's very conservative in the modern sense now. Most of it, the vast majority of it. There are liberal cities like Lexington is a little bit of a left-leaning city, or kind of purple, I guess you'd say. Pretty progressive in a lot of ways. Louisville's pretty urban now. I mean, it's kind of a lot like a St. Louis or something like that. Nice city in a lot of ways, but it's pretty heavily Democratic, there locally in Louisville. And aside from those kind of enclaves, it's real red, very red. Interestingly, now overwhelmingly Republican, but when I was a kid and growing up, it was very heavily Democrat. FDR type Democrats, Roosevelt, New Deal type Democrats all over, especially in the mountains. But recent history has changed all that. Everybody's has switched. My grandmother, my mom's side, she was a character too, and she lived in Somerset too when I was a kid, and she'd babysit for us and things. Big time New Deal Democrat, hated Ronald Reagan with a passion. I mean, I think I learned most of the cuss words I know from just being in the room when she was watching Reagan on CNN. And she hated him. I liked it. I thought, well, I don't know, Mama. I like it. But now, she's passed away now. But I don't see her being a Biden supporter if she were alive today at all. So it's interesting how things have changed.
So she actually knew the original New Deal.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I think people today don't even know what the Green New Deal is a reference to.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, I do know one Kentucky joke.
Okay.
How do you? I learned this from the Hollywood Squares. How do you pronounce the capital of Kentucky? Louisville or Louisville?
Yeah. That's a good one.
Yeah, Paul Lind actually got that wrong.
Oh, he went for it, huh? He bought it.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
Well, both those are wrong anyway. It's yeah.
Yeah. Should we tell her the answer there? Yeah,
well, of course it's Frankfurt, but you'd never pronounce the locals. It's not Louisville or Louisville. It
was your accent that reminded me of the joke.
Yeah, okay.
Louisville. It's almost two syllables. Louisville.
Yeah. Yeah. It's sort of like, imagine it's spelled. Well, you could do like LULL VULL. That's probably the best. Louisville.
Really?
That's the best advice I can give. If you want to sound like a local there. I don't know why you would, but
I remember being in New Orleans and saying it wrong and having been corrected by a native. I'm like, buddy, I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to be more infuriating, like trying to do it like you just did. Like, no, right. I'm like, oh boy.
Yeah.
What we got here?
Sure.
I just want you to know that I'm smiling and I'm really enjoying this.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Sorry that I don't have a camera.
That's all right.
So, I see here you're a fellow historian, and you like all sorts of things, mainly 19th and 20th. Well, 18th, 19th, 20th, or do you go back even further?
Oh, I'm interested in all of it. I mostly read about American history. 18th century. World War II, and then I kind of jumped to World War II. I enjoy that quite a bit. Like a lot of people, I have pretty standard tastes and all that kind of stuff, But obviously, the founding area, the colonial area, is always fascinating to me. Even before that, the French and Indian War, those kinds of things, I enjoy reading about. westward expansion. It kind of fascinates me a little bit. So yeah, I read all that. Lately, I've been reading a lot of, not that, I for some reason, I can't stop reading like memoirs, so soldiers' memoirs from like World War I, World War II, first person kind of things, diaries and memoirs. I don't know why lately I've been kind of on the kick of that kind of stuff. So
a really good one to read from World War II is Jason Kenney. No, it's General Kenney Reports.
Okay.
And he's was MacArthur's air commander in the Pacific Campaign.
Oh wow, yeah.
And he went on to become briefly head of SAC, Strategic Air Command, lost some political fight, and ended up running the Air Force Academy. But
oh, is that right? Okay.
But he has great stories of what happened down there, and just like him, like he said, because he knew he was low priority, he would make arrangements to get like. He said, "Screw it, give me what your crap, and I'll make it work." And they made like they took these bombers they didn't like in the Atlantic campaign or in England, and they made them into like these gunships with like giant cannons, and flew over the Japanese and sunk like an entire convoy just with these 20 millimeter cannons. It was like, oh wow.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'd love to read about that. I'll check that out. Yeah. Yeah, especially the aviation part of World War II, I think is fascinating. We have here. I live here near Dayton, and of course near Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and there's the museum, the Air Force Museum here is unbelievable.
My big regret the one time I was in Dayton is I didn't go. I came in late when all my friends were touring in the Air Force Base.
Okay. It's worth it. It's huge, and it takes a long time, but it's free. You don't pay a dime to get in, and it's amazing what they have in there. It really is neat.
I think I've actually been there. I remember seeing an SR-71 that struck me as being so small.
Yeah.
It's almost a miniature of how it's like 1/5 the size that I thought it was.
Yeah. They've got one there. It's a little weird how they have them, at least now, set out there, because the sizes are kind of hard to figure. They'll have what's really a pretty big plane, but they've got it like under the wing of the B-36 or something, right? And so it's dwarfed by this other plane, but the scale's all off, you know. It's a wonderful museum.
Yeah, I tried writing an article on that, and my editor never liked it, or has yet to publish it for certain. It was like he just kept coming back and forth over it, and it was like, the thing is that they needed titanium to make the airframe, and at the time, the only place in the world they could get a sufficient quantity was from the Soviet Union. So they came up with, they started like making the CIA made commercial projects and just started like trying to come up with any kind of reason otherwise than to tell the Soviets they needed it for airframes. They came up with some other product that they said they needed it for, and the Soviets bought it.
Wow.
Because if the Soviets realized where they were getting it from, they would have killed the program.
Oh, wow. That's fascinating. That's another area that I'd like to read more about, is like spy, Cold War spying. It's pretty fascinating too.
Yeah, I've read and even written a fair bit more about less Cold War and more World War II.
Okay.
So I wrote an article on Operation Double Cross. I've done the SOE. Operations research is a fascinating thing. It's like these are scientists who statistically try to figure out the best way to bomb things.
Yeah.
Like at one point they were calculating, so a submarine doing a dive, and you have your plane trying to dive to get it. So you wanted to know what angle to drop your bomb so that when the sub got so many feet this way, it would run into the depth charge.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's incredible what they figured out, Amazing what a motivator of global war can be, I guess.
Yeah. And when you have enough men and material and people thinking outside the box, and that was something I've learned a fair bit about the Germans. They were very operational thinkers, but they didn't think. They never had the staff or capability to really think through all possible endings. The generals would supposedly get together, make these giant war plans, and then walk away. And the supply guys are like, "How am I going to figure out how to do any of these things?"
Right. It's a great plan, but there's no, the capability of doing it is something else, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. My other grandfather was. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask Flicker if you wanted to say something.
Yeah.
Oh, not just what I said one other time, which is that it seems like the military really the primary emphasis of the military is logistics. Forget about rifles and planes. It's some food supplies and stuff. Boy,
yeah, that's true.
You were saying about your grandfather.
Oh yeah, how I got into it. My other grandfather was he was a bomber pilot in the war. He flew B-24s out of Italy, and so and I was reading I have some of his letters. When he later when he was an old man, he typed them up, for everybody. He went through them and typed them up, which was nice. And a lot of it is just his training. I mean, it was like 2 years of training. It's unbelievable. He's talking about going to this high-level calculus classes, and then he went through a lot of flight engineering training, and it occurred to me after reading that you had this, after World War II, a huge number of people with really amazing training that they got. He could have done anything with that. That's really something. But yeah, we don't get much of that now. I guess for a good reason. I mean, I'd rather have peace than a global war that conveniently ended up with a bunch of people trained in a lot of things. But it's interesting how things turned out, how things have changed.
Yeah, was it? I was reading an article the other day because I was watching the Gettysburg movie again, and they're talking about they're doing the Buell scene where he's like didn't take. And I was reading the article, and it's like, no, this is all just stuff. Lee apologists made up this story to denigrate the Buell for not losing the war. And then they're talking about the thing was the reason they wanted to take Gettysburg is because they had a large amount of shoes there.
Yeah. It's kind of like what Flicker was saying, it drives so much, just the practicalities of it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So.
How many shoes? I'm just trying to think. I'm sorry. I mean, I can understand that you might want to take a county that has just cattle all over the place, but to take a city because it has a shoe warehouse, I'm just wondering how many shoes they actually were anticipating.
Yeah, my understanding maybe at least 5,000, but you got to pairs of shoes. But when half your army doesn't have shoes.
Yeah. My God.
Walking around barefoot.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So what is it going to say? So you also mentioned here so that you a bit of you mentioned something about your faith. Did you want to talk about that at all?
Oh, no, I put that in there. It's an important thing I think to put in there. Yeah, we go to a Methodist church here in town, and I enjoy that. I've always been, I grew up very much in the Bible Belt there in Somerset, so it's something that's always been kind of in the ether, I guess, around me, But it came to appreciate it a lot more as an adult, as I think a lot of people do. So, yeah, but that's
Yeah, for me on what happened for my Methodist story. I'm one day at my Anglican church and we're doing the like yearbook photos, and this couple comes in and the woman's like looking around like I hope I'm not going to burst into flame. You know, I'm a heretic. I'm like, oh what? Yeah, I'm a Methodist.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, yeah, I don't, I don't even know a whole lot about the differences in the denominations. I guess I'm kind of more of a mere Christianity guy, like the C.S. Lewis book.
Well, Anglicanism is very much like Catholicism, except we do away with some annoying bits.
Okay.
Well, here's a big difference. So confession, you go into the Catholics go in your confessional and you tell the priest the things. Anglican confession, the officiant gets up and he starts it, and we all repeat after him something basically to the effect of, "Sorry, God, for being human, that we're not as cool as you. We'll try harder next week," and then we do the peace.
Yeah.
It's much more flowery when he does it, but that's basically the short story. But, we're just not as good as you, God. We're sorry, and we'll try to work better next week.
Yeah. That's funny.
But we do the whole communion. We do all the other stuff that Catholic do. We just got rid of a lot of things that were like our priests can marry. You can we have bishops or women, all that kind of stuff.
Okay. Sure.
And the Archbishop of Canterbury considers himself first among equals. And what is it? And technically the Queen's in charge of everything.
I see. I listen to a lot of N.T. Wright, or I catch him on podcasts and things and stuff. I think he's a pretty famous Anglican bishop. Is that right? Yeah. Tom Wright. N.T. Wright.
I don't know him off the top of my head. I just remember the one time we had the Archbishop of Canada show up to our church, and he had this speech, and every time I thought he was going to come to a conclusion, he'd just go back into another round. I'm like, are you just adding another paragraph every year?
Dave, let me ask you, do you have an Episcopalian church in Canada?
I'm not too sure. I think we might, because it is basically the same thing, except for Episcopalians are not taking their orders from the Archbishop of Canterbury. I think they don't recognize the Queen. I think it's the big difference.
Right.
I'm not 100% on that.
Yeah, maybe.
I believe we do have Episcopalians here.
Huh. Okay, because actually I thought that it was rare to have Anglican churches in the United States. They're mostly Episcopalian. And I remember one Episcopalian. My mother actually played the organ for an Episcopalian church, and one day she came home and said, and by the way, she wasn't Episcopalian, but she said that the church was changing its affiliation to Anglican because the Episcopalians had become so liberal, and so that's I guess I just figured that the Episcopalian Church was a U.S. denomination.
Yeah, that whole revolutionary thing that happened once upon a time.
Oh, yeah,
it really severed the church for a long time. But I guess now you can. It's not so much big a deal that the head of the church is the Queen of England.
Well, I was baptized Southern. No, I was baptized Conservative Baptist, and the preacher specifically told me that doesn't mean that we wear suits and ties. It had to do with a division within the Baptists or the American Baptists or something like that.
Right.
During the Civil War, when the Southern Baptists came out in favor of slavery, and the Northern Baptists were apparently against slavery, so they separated, or they divided up into two groups, and the Conservative Baptists in the North and the Southern Baptists in the South.
I see.
But nowadays, I think I don't know that there are any Conservative Baptist churches anymore.
I would think there are pretty conservative Baptists out there, from what I can tell.
Well, I mean, the denomination name was Conservative Baptist.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I don't hear that. I mean, I don't hear. It's usually First Baptist Church of this or that, or Fifth Street Baptist or something. I don't hear conservative Baptist.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
That's good.
I found an article here about the differences, and the big difference is, the revolution.
Okay.
No, the Civil War.
Civil War. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Episcopalians formed in 1789, and they just don't go
Let
work
me
for
ask
the Archbishop of Canterbury.
Let me ask a question. I don't know if this is on your list, but Andy, right?
Right.
What do you do for fun? What are your hobbies? How do you fulfill your what do you do when you're not working?
Yeah. Well, I've got 3 kids who keep me pretty busy. They're 12, 9, and 7. So, and pretty active kids. So, I joke that I used to have hobbies. I used to play the guitar a little bit, and my wife and I used to hike a lot. We used to, like to tour around the parks and hike. And now the kids are getting older, we can do a little bit more of that. But gosh, these days it's work and getting kids to soccer games and swimming practice and whatever else is going on. That really does keep us very busy. And I think parenting has kind of gone insane with that kind of stuff these days. It's very different than when I was a kid. I'm not that. I mean, I'm 44. I'll be 45, but soon. But in the last 30 years, I feel like it's really gone off the rails. It's just constant. I mean, these kids play soccer, they play baseball or basketball or whatever, and they'll play it year round. I mean, there's no season anymore. It's just that's your life.
Mm-hmm.
And huge costs to it, huge, and you get swept up in it. You don't want your kid likes to play soccer, he likes to play basketball or whatever, and he's got friends on the teams, and you don't want him to be left behind. But then next thing you know, you're in this, this channel, and it's like, Lord, this is his life now. It's different.
Yeah, it's different from when we were kids, when we were basically let out the back door, and the parents didn't know where you were for all day long.
Yeah, my childhood was spending 8 or 10 hours a day in the forest, just following streams and turning over rocks.
I did that a lot as well. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I remember, I think that somewhere along the line, I realized I should be home by 5, because that's when my mother was screaming out the door my name, but I could be 10 miles away. So I had to be home basically by 5.
Right. We used to do that. There was a creek, not probably a mile and a half from my house, and I'd be up there up to my knees in this creek, and I was probably 7 or 8 years old, And I think about that now, and I think, my goodness, I'd freak out if my kid, if I thought he was somewhere up in a creek somewhere. So I'm as bad as anybody, and sort of thinking.
Well, do you know where your children are every hour of the day? Because my parents didn't.
Well, for the youngest, I do. Now, my oldest, my 12-year-old, and I'm glad for this. He's got a couple of buddies in the neighborhood that they run around. And he's at the age, and we trust him enough and his friends enough to run around the neighborhood. Mm-hmm. But and they like to go metal detecting. That's their big thing. They like to have these little metal detectors, and they go dig things up, hopefully with permission. But so far, that hasn't been a problem. But
so how far they haven't dug up any live power?
No, not yet. So he gets some of that, and when he doesn't have to be at a sport or something, or some activity. But aside from that, though, I mean, I guess I do know where they are most all the time. I get that. I don't know if that's a good thing, but that's how it is these days. It's kind of a shame.
Well, I don't know. I can't rate it good or bad. I was just wondering, what if there were differences.
Yeah.
So.
It's definitely different. It's different with it's well, the dog. We were talking about the dog, earlier, and when I was a kid, we had dogs, but they just ran. They never came in the house. They lived outside, and we fed them, and so they stuck around. But I mean, they had the run of the county if they wanted it, and that it wasn't weird to me then. But now I got my dog. She's good. Stays in the fence, and if she gets out of there, I got her on a leash, and and of course sometimes they get hit by cars. I guess we were just we just didn't worry about that as much back then. I don't know why not, but it's weird. I don't know what's happened.
We all kind of got civilized, I think.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. My dog.
We have to move out to Alaska like a couple of our other guests.
Yeah. I had a dog once this is an awful story. I don't know why I'm telling this, but we think he came up to the house one day and his tail was all mangled, and he used to chase cars a lot, and so the immediate assumption was that he'd probably got his tail run over. I'd seen him I saw him one time get run over, but he just dodged the wheels, so it didn't hurt him. It scared me to death. But then, so he comes and he's got this mangled up tail. And of course, my dad is like, I'm not paying a vet to, chop this tail off. I can do that, right? So he got some kind of shears or something, and I wasn't around when he did this, but he sure enough cut the dog's tail off, which had to be done. It was terribly effective. But and I don't know, maybe he put something on it. I don't know what he did.
Yeah, it must have done something.
Yeah, but he just wasn't gonna. Of course, it got infected. That ended up being a disaster. It got infected, and he eventually had to take it to the vet anyway to have it. But that poor dog after that was never the same. They don't.
It's never as long.
Yeah, right. Well, still, it's never as long. But I felt terrible for him. It's like he lost all his pride. He just he became very dog. Yeah.
The dog I had as a kid, when I had gone to college by that point, but her tail got run over by a car, and she was not quite the same dog. It just didn't have the same personality.
Yeah. We should have.
How do you know that she didn't have the same personality? I mean, if you're watching for the personality in the tail wagging, I can see that you might interpret the personality to be different, but that's just,
Yeah. Well, I can't speak for Dave's situation, but with this dog, he was just a lot less adventurous. He would stay around the house more, just less bold, less, I don't know how to describe it. He just changed,
Huh.
So should have put a prosthetic, if he'd have somehow fashioned a fake tail, that's probably the thing to have done, but we didn't think that.
Some sort of cyborg tail. We can make this dog better.
Right.
Stronger, faster.
Well,
or just tie a rope to the nub.
That's right. Yeah. I was thinking like a feather duster with duct tape or something.
Yeah, that would save a lot of pet psychology sessions.
That's right.
Okay, well, we're getting near close to the hour mark here, so I'm gonna ask you how you found Ricochet.
Gosh, I don't even remember. I think I originally joined Ricochet for the first time 2012, I want to say, about the time Romney was running. And honestly, I don't know. It must have been a link to it or something. I just don't remember. But I remember seeing it and thinking, well, this is an interesting site. And it's got a lot of good commentary. And so I joined back then. I let it lapse, and then I think I rejoined about 2014. I think, just because I wanted to get back into it. So, I've enjoyed it.
Well, it was nice meeting you. It's good to see your face and to put a face with the message.
Yeah, I wish I could for you with the same flicker, but all I see is
Well, you
this
can
little.
watch some of his old episodes.
There you go. Yeah, I'll do that. I see
That's
this
not
little green duck,
necessary.
but yeah. No, it's good to meet you guys. I appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So it's just it's like that's one of the things I find really good about this podcast is the Ricochet's better than say the normal internet, but it does allow us the chance to get to know each other when we might not be agreeing with each other all the time.
Oh yeah, yeah. I have some disagreements sometimes on Ricochet, but I hope it's.
I hope you don't hold any of them against me.
Yeah, no, I know, and I'm hoping nothing's held against me as well. I just.
No. No, but it was something that someone pointed out, or Flickr said here, we should get like someone from that group of people. And I said, yeah, we haven't had a person who is from the never Trump community, as some
Right.
put it.
Well, are you never Trump?
No, I wouldn't describe myself that way. I'm not a big fan of Trump at all, but I don't know about never Trump. I certainly wouldn't vote for Biden, or I've never voted for a Democrat at least in presidential election. But yeah, I mean, I have my disagreements with the Trump side, but I'm not a never Trumper. I wouldn't say. Certainly not
like our previous guest, who I was thinking of, Lois Lane, who is definitely she would have been in the Rob Long category. I voted for the guy, but I didn't like the guy.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I mean,
what did you? I know that this is the end of the show, but was it his personality or was it his policy, or both?
Well, a little of both, or maybe his focus. It is a lot of personality. It's a lot of the. It's hard to explain without an actual example here in front of me, but yeah, I mean, my worry, a lot of my worry is that he will eventually just turn people away from the conservative side, from the right leaning side,
Yeah.
And I will fully admit I'm a compromiser kind of by nature, by nature, and so it seems apparent to me that there's a tremendous number of people in this country who disagree with us on all these things. And ultimately, you got to live with them, and you got to, find some way forward with them. And so, if you're just stoking the base all the time and getting people riled up, I just think eventually you'll lose support. But who knows? I mean, there's something to be said for keeping people, engaged too. I get that, but my concern is that you lose the middle, you end up turning so many people off, and it ends up helping the other side. So that's kind of a quick way to put it here at the end, but there's a lot to unpack there probably. But.
Well, yeah. Maybe it was an unfair question.
Yeah, no, that's all right. I don't mind.
Yeah, for me, looking at it, it's just like I think I've said this a few times in different places, but Trump had the Michael Moore effect. I remember Michael Moore made Fahrenheit 9/11 and did all this stuff, and then he made all this money, got Oscars, and then 10 years later, his movies are bombing because other people are doing what he did better. And I think that's going to be Trump's problem, is that he showed the way. He was the first guy through the door, but there's going to be 20 guys who can refine his message and not like a Ron DeSantis type.
Yeah.
And know when Trump throws at everything, Ron knows how to punch well and not like throw a haymaker every time.
Right. Yeah, I think that makes sense.
And well, I want to thank you for coming on, and I do have something for the end of the show to announce. Flicker, your suggestion that you talked to me last time about, I've talked to Doc Bassett. We're probably going to do something with that, where you will interview the two of them for a panel on 70.
I'm sorry, what? I didn't hear that. What?
What? My connect.
Well, anyway, I look forward to it. Well,
we've lost it. Yeah.
It's a pleasure meeting you.
Nice to meet you guys.
I waved to you.
All right. All right. Take care.
Alrighty. Bye-bye.
Bye.